After the family dinner, I forgot my phone on the table. When I returned, the server locked the door and whispered, "I'm going to show you the security footage from your table, but promise me you won't faint." What I saw in that video brought me to my knees. I still pretend I know nothing because I need to know how deep this conspiracy goes. And who is standing behind the person committing this crime? Where are you watching this video? From comment now to let me know. And if you've ever been betrayed by a family member, leave your mark here. Sometimes the closest people are the most dangerous. I left my phone at the tasting room after dinner with my son. When I returned 20 minutes later, the server met me at the door. Parker Jensen, the name tag read. But instead of handing me my phone, she locked the door behind me and turned the deadbolt with a soft click that echoed through the empty dining room. "Mr. Whitmore," her voice was barely above a whisper, "you need to see something." The Pearl District restaurant had closed for the night. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Portland's October rain streaked the glass, blurring the streetlights into watercolor smudges. Parker's hands trembled as we walked past the empty tables, down a narrow hallway, into a cramped office that smelled of printer, toner, and cold coffee. Security monitors lined one wall. My phone sat on the desk beside the keyboard, but Parker wasn't reaching for my phone. She was pulling up footage on the largest monitor, table 7, she said. Fingers flying across the keyboard. "Your table from earlier tonight." The timestamp read 9:47 p.m. I watched myself sitting across from Derek, my son's face animated as he talked. Sienna sat beside him, her emerald dress catching the candlelight, her hand resting possessively on his arm. I watched myself rise from the table. I knew what came next. I'd known for 2 months, but I let her show me anyway. The moment my back turned toward the restroom, Derek's expression changed. The concerned son vanished. What replaced it made my chest tighten, even though I'd prepared myself for this moment. Derek reached into his jacket, smooth, practiced. He pulled out a small vial, clear liquid. He uncapped it with his thumb, and he poured it into my wine glass. The Chardonnay I'd been savoring all evening now contaminated with whatever poison my son had chosen for his father. But that wasn't the worst part. Sienna saw. Of course she saw. She was sitting right there, and she didn't stop him. Didn't gasp, didn't reach out. She turned her body, angling herself to shield Derek from view. She smiled at someone across the room, creating the perfect distraction. They were a team. On the monitor, I watched myself return. Watch myself sit down and lift that poison glass to my lips. Watch myself drink. Derek waited until I set the glass down. Then he lifted his own wine, catching Sienna's eye over the rim, and he hunched his shoulders, let his head wobble just slightly. A cruel parody of the tremor I'd been developing over the past 8 months. The weakness I'd been attributing to age, to stress, to the natural decline of a 68-year-old body. Derek mimicked my confusion, twisted his face into an exaggerated version of the lost expression I wore when I couldn't taste the difference between basil and oregano anymore. And Sienna laughed, silent on the footage, but unmistakable. Her shoulders shook. Her hand flew to her mouth, but not before I saw the smile. My son poisoning me, my son mocking me. The room tilted. I felt Parker's hands on my shoulders, steadying me as my knees buckled. The act came easier than I expected. After 2 months of playing weak, my body knew the choreography. "I'm so sorry," she kept saying. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Whitmore." I'd known for 2 months. Known since I'd gotten the blood test results back and seen the zinc levels dropping. Known since I'd hired the private investigator who traced Derek's debts back to casinos. Known since I'd found the vials in Derek's bathroom trash labeled with chemical compounds that had no business being in a family home. But knowing and seeing are different animals. Knowing is intellectual, a fact filed away in your mind. Seeing is visceral. It's watching your only child, the boy you taught to crack eggs without getting shell in the bowl. The teenager who cried when you won your second Michelin star, watching that person become someone you don't recognize. Mr. Whitmore. Parker's voice cut through the fog. Should I call the police? No. My voice came out rougher than intended. No police. Not yet. Her eyes widened. But he tried to not kill, I said quietly. If he wanted me dead, there are easier methods. No, this is something else. This is strategic. I stared at the monitor at my son's face, sharp with concentration at Sienna's profile, beautiful, and cold as marble at my own oblivious back. 40 years I'd built the Whitmore collection. 40 years of 16-hour days and burned fingers, and the particular heartbreak that comes from training a sauce for 6 hours only to have it break in the final minute. And Derek wanted it all. Not to earn it, not to build on what I'd created to steal it. Mr. Whitmore Parker said carefully. What are you going to do? I pulled out my phone, checked the date, Friday, October 18th, 10:47 p.m. I need 5 days. 5 days for what to finish this. I looked at her directly. Next Friday, there's a board meeting. If Derek has his way, I'll sign over power of attorney. The Whitmore collection becomes his. My father's legacy gets sold off piece by piece to pay gambling debts I didn't even know existed. Her mouth open closed. How do you? I've known for 2 months, I said, simply. I've been investigating, planning, waiting for the right moment. I gestured at the monitor. This footage, this is the last piece I needed. Evidence even Derek can't explain. So you're going to the police eventually? I stood testing my legs. But first I'm going to play weak. Confused, dying even. I'm going to make him believe he's won. Parker stared at me like I'd suggested jumping off the steel bridge. And then next Friday, in front of witnesses, in front of the board, I picked up my phone. Then I'm going to show him what happens when you come after a Whitmore. That's dangerous. If he's poisoning you, I've been taking zinc supplements for 6 weeks. I said chelating agents to reverse the damage. My senses are coming back. Not fully, not yet, but enough. I extended my hand. Thank you, Parker, for your courage. Most people would have looked away. She shook my hand, grip firm, despite the tremor I could feel. Most people aren't watching someone poison their own father. The rain had picked up when we walked back through the dining room. Parker unlocked the door. Mr. Whitmore, be careful. I will. I stepped out into the rain. And Parker, you might want to update your resume. After next Friday, there's going to be a position opening up at the Grant House if you're interested. Her face transformed. The Grant House, your restaurant? You're someone who did the right thing when staying silent would have been easier, I said. That's exactly the kind of person I need. I walked to my car through the rain. My hands shook as I unlocked it. Not from the poison, not from age, from rage. Pure crystalline rage that I'd spent 2 months banking and storing and compressing into a diamond hard point of determination. 5 days. 5 days to play the dying patriarch while I dismantled everything Derek thought he'd built. 5 days to contact Daniel Reed, my operations manager, to secure the recipes and the training manuals and the proprietary techniques that Derek planned to sell. 5 days to gather every piece of evidence, every transaction, every lie. 5 days to make sure that when I struck, it would be fatal. Not to Derek's body, to Derek's plans. I started the engine. The dashboard clock glowed. 11:03 p.m., Friday, October 18th. Derek had no idea this wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. The house in Lake Oswego sat dark and silent when I pulled into the driveway at midnight. Rain drummed against the roof of my car, a steady percussion that matched the rhythm of my thoughts. I didn't go upstairs to bed. Instead, I walked through the mudroom into the kitchen. Not the showpiece kitchen where Liz and I used to cook together on Sunday mornings, but the back kitchen, the experimental one, the laboratory. Most people don't know that. Before I ever picked up a chef's knife, I spent 4 years studying chemistry at Portland State. My father thought it was a waste. Cook food, don't dissect it, he'd said. But chemistry taught me something crucial. Everything can be broken down into its component parts. Every sauce, every flavor, every poison. I flipped on the overhead lights and pulled the handkerchief from my jacket pocket. Earlier tonight at the tasting room, I'd folded it against the rim of my wine glass after watching that security footage. The fabric had absorbed whatever residue Derrick left behind. I laid it flat on the counter under the task light. The truth was, I didn't need this test. I'd known for 2 months. But there's a difference between suspecting and confirming, between feeling your body betray you and seeing the evidence under a microscope. I set up the testing station with practice efficiency beers, reagent strips, the portable spectrometer I'd bought for analyzing wine chemistry. The handkerchief went into a solution of distilled water and ethanol. While it soaked, I opened the file folder I'd hidden behind the cookbooks on the top shelf. The one Derrick didn't know existed. The blood test results sat on top. August 23rd, my doctor had called me personally. Grant, your zinc levels are dangerously low, 40 micrograms per deciliter. Normal range is 70 to 120. I'd ask the obvious question. What causes that malnutrition, which you don't have alcoholism, which you don't have, or chelation? If someone were deliberately binding the zinc in your system, that's when I'd stopped trusting the meals Derrick brought over. That's when I'd started investigating. I filtered the handkerchief solution, then placed 3 drops onto the testing strip. The reagent reacted immediately, blooming purple-black sulfite receptor antagonist. Combined with the chelating agent, it created a perfect storm. A chef losing his senses so gradually, he'd assume it was age, stress, natural decline. By the time I realized what was happening, Derrick expected I'd be too weak to fight back. He'd miscalculated. I'd felt the change in late August. The way roasted garlic suddenly had no aroma. The way my signature Beurre Blanc tasted like nothing. I'd gone to 3 different doctors. They'd found nothing conclusive. So I'd gone to a toxicologist. Mr. Whitmore, she'd said, someone is poisoning you slowly, methodically, and whoever it is knows exactly what they're doing. That's when I'd hired the private investigator. That's when I'd started playing along. I pulled out the PI's report dated September 28th. Derrick's financial records, obtained through methods I chose not to examine too closely. $4.2 million in gambling debt, not to one casino, to a chain of them. High-end establishments in Atlantic City, Las Vegas, Portland, all under the same parent company, Royal Flush Holdings. The name had meant nothing to me at first. I'd asked the investigator to dig deeper. 3 days later, he'd called me at 2 a.m. Mr. Whitmore, you need to see this. Royal Flush Holdings is a subsidiary of the Vail Collection. My hand had gone numb around the phone. Marcus Vail. I sat down the PI's report and picked up the next document, Sienna's background check. Sienna Castellano, born in Atlantic City. No family listed. No previous address before Portland. No employment history before she'd appeared at Derrick's side 3 years ago. But there was one connection. The investigator had found a photograph grainy and dated from a restaurant opening in the mid-Atlantic City 5 years ago. Marcus Vail cutting a ribbon surrounded by staff. There in the background, barely visible, a woman with Sienna's profile wearing a hostess uniform. She'd worked for Marcus. I'd stared at that photograph for an hour, feeling the pieces slot into place. Marcus hadn't just stumbled into Derrick's life. He'd planted Sienna there. He'd encouraged the gambling, probably extended the credit that got Derrick in so deep. But why I turned to the last page in the folder, the one I'd written myself 3 weeks ago, a timeline. 20 years ago, I'd exposed Marcus Vail for plagiarizing recipes from a young line cook at my restaurant. The scandal destroyed Marcus's reputation, cost him a Michelin star, forced him to rebuild his empire from scratch. He'd blame me for that publicly, viciously. Then the story had faded. Marcus had moved to the East Coast. I'd thought it was over. I'd been wrong. I looked at the next entry. 17 years ago, Cameron Stratton's daughter, Jessica, had died. Suicide, the official report said. But I'd learned the truth only recently. She'd been pregnant with Derek's child. Derek had abandoned her. Cameron had blamed me for raising a son capable of such cruelty. The chemicals Derek was using, the chelating agents, the sulfite blockers, they weren't available at your local pharmacy. They required industrial suppliers, someone like Cameron Stratton, who ran Pacific Chemical Group. Two old enemies, both with grudges, both with resources, and Derek trapped between them, too weak and greedy to realize he was a pawn. I pulled out one more document, the envelope I'd found in Liz's personal effects 2 months ago, her handwriting on the front for Grant to be opened if Derek ever threatens the family. Inside a single page, Grant. If you're reading this, then our son has become the man I feared he would. I've seen the resentment in him, the entitlement. Please don't let him destroy what you've built, and please don't blame yourself. Some people are born with a hollow place inside them that love can never fill. Choose your legacy carefully. Blood isn't always family. Liz, she'd known. Even then she'd known. I gathered the documents back into the folder, turned off the spectrometer, rinsed the beak in the sink. Through the kitchen window, I could see the first gray light of dawn touching the tops of the Douglas firs that line my property. This wasn't just my son trying to steal an inheritance. This was orchestrated. A revenge plot executed by someone patient enough to wait for the perfect moment. Someone who'd used my own son as a weapon. Marcus thought I was dying. Thought I'd sign over power of attorney and fade quietly into irrelevance. Cameron thought the poison would steal my senses, leave me helpless and confused. Derek thought I trusted him. They were all wrong. I climbed the stairs to my bedroom as the sun broke over the horizon. My body ached from the poison, from the long night, from 68 years of living. But my mind was sharp. And in 5 days, they'd all learn what happens when you underestimate a chef who spent 4 years studying chemistry. A name I hadn't thought about in 20 years had resurfaced. And now I understood the full scope of what I was facing. This wasn't the end of anything. This was just the beginning. I didn't sleep. At 3:00 in the morning, I sat in my study with the file folder open on the desk and my phone in my hand. Through the window, Lake Oswego spread out below, dark and still. I scrolled through my contacts and pressed Daniel Reed's name. He answered on the 4th ring, voice thick with sleep. "Grant, what's wrong? I need you," I said, "right now." There was a pause. Then the sleep cleared from his voice entirely. "I'll be there in 20. He made it in 17. Daniel Reed had been my operations manager for 30 years. We'd started together when the Grant house was just a dream and a lease agreement I couldn't afford. He knew every secret the Whitmore collection held. Almost every secret. I heard his truck in the driveway. I opened the door before he could knock. Jesus, Grant. Daniel looked me up and down. "You look like hell." I handed him the file folder without preamble. Read. Daniel sat in the leather chair across from my desk. I watched his face as he moved through the documents, the blood test results, the PI report, the photograph of Sienna, the timeline connecting Marcus Vale to Derek's debts. His jaw tightened. "How long have you known? 2 months? 2 months?" Daniel sat down the folder. "And you didn't tell me." I needed to be sure. I needed evidence that would stand up. I leaned forward. Derek isn't working alone. Marcus Vale planted Sienna. Encouraged the gambling. Got Derek buried under $4.2 million in debt at casinos Marcus owns. And Cameron Stratton provides the chemicals. Exactly. I stood and walked to the window. Dawn was still hours away. They get their revenge. Derek gets the money. Everyone wins except me. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. "Then what do you need?" This was why I'd called Daniel. Not just because he was competent, not just because I trusted him, but because when the world fell apart, Daniel Reed asked one question. What do you need 5 days? I said there's a board meeting next Friday. Derek expects me to sign power of attorney. Give him control because I'm too sick, too confused to run the company. But you're not. I've been taking zinc supplements for 6 weeks. My senses are coming back. I sat back down. For the next 5 days, I need to play weak, dying even. I need Derek to believe he's won. And then I walk into that board meeting with every piece of evidence. I expose Derek, Sienna, Marcus, Cameron, all of it in front of witnesses. I destroy them. Daniel leaned back. You're going to need the physical assets secured. If Derek realizes you're onto him, he'll strip the company before I can stop him. I pulled out a notepad and pen. That's where you come in. The recipes, the training manuals, the proprietary techniques. I need it moved, hidden somewhere. Derek can't touch it. That's a lot of material. I know, but you know where everything is. I met Daniel's eyes. Can you do it? Yes. No hesitation. I'll need help. People I trust. Chef Rosso. Linda Chen from accounting. People who've been with us from the beginning. I wrote an address on the notepad and slid it across the desk. Storage facility in Beaverton, climate controlled. I rented it 2 weeks ago under a different name. Everything goes there. Daniel pocketed the paper. When do we start tomorrow, Saturday? Derek thinks I'm home resting. He won't be watching. Anything else? I opened the bottom drawer and pulled out a USB drive. Liz left something. A video. She recorded it a month before she died. Daniel's expression softened. You've watched it 3 times? I turned the drive over in my hands. She knew Daniel. She knew Derek was broken. She tried to warn me. Liz always saw people clearly. She asked me not to let him destroy what we built. She said blood isn't always family, that I should choose my legacy carefully. Daniel sat back down. Grant, whatever happens next week, make sure it's what you want, not revenge. You. It's not revenge, isn't it? I thought about Derek's face on that security footage. The casual cruelty as he poured poison into my wine. Maybe it started as revenge, I admitted 2 months ago when I first found out. But it's not that anymore. It's about protecting what we built. It's about making sure Marcus and Cameron can't use my son to destroy 30 years of work. And Derek made his choice. I set down the USB drive. I'll give him one chance to tell the truth at that board meeting. One chance to admit what he's done. If he takes it, maybe there's something to salvage. And if he doesn't, then I'll do what needs to be done. Outside, the sky had begun to lighten. Not sunrise yet, but that pale gray that comes before dawn. Liz would be proud of you, Daniel said quietly. I hope so. Daniel stood. I'll start the inventory today. Have everything mapped by Sunday. We can move it Monday and Tuesday. Derek will visit, play the concerned son, bring soup, ask about my health. I smiled without humor. I'll play my part. Weak voice, trembling hands, confusion about dates. By Wednesday, he'll be confident. By Thursday, he'll be celebrating. And Friday, we show him exactly what happens when you bet against a Whitmore. Daniel pulled on his rain jacket. At the door, he turned back. Why didn't you tell me sooner? 2 months is a long time to carry this alone. Because if Derek suspected I knew he might have disappeared, or worse, accelerated the poisoning, I needed him confident, comfortable. I needed him to make mistakes. I walked Daniel to the door, and I needed to be absolutely certain before I involved anyone else, even you. I understand. He gripped my shoulder. I'll call you tonight with the inventory list. Thank you, Daniel. Don't thank me yet. Thank me next Saturday when this is over. I watched him drive away as the sun crept over the eastern hills. Portland was waking up. Lights flickered on in distant houses. The world moved forward, oblivious. I closed the door and walked back to my study. The file folder still lay open on my desk. Derek's photograph paperclip, to the financial records. My son, my betrayer. Step 1. Make Derek believe he'd already won. Step 2. Let him dig his grave a little deeper. Step 3. Bury him in it. I picked up my phone and typed a message to Derek. Not feeling well this morning. Could you come by later? Want to talk about Friday's meeting? The reply came within 2 minutes. Of course, Dad. I'll bring lunch. Rest up. I set down the phone. The performance had begun. Saturday morning. I waited until 8 hours before calling Derek. Early enough to seem desperate, late enough that he'd already be awake. I practiced the tremor in my voice twice before dialing. Derek. I let my words slur slightly. Son, I can't wait until next week. There was a pause on the other end, then concern perfectly calibrated. Dad, what's wrong? This morning I couldn't taste my coffee. Nothing. Not even the bitterness. I added a slight wheeze. It's getting worse. I need to get things in order today. Dad, we talked about this Friday, the board meeting. I know what we talked about. I let frustration creep in, but I'm scared. What if by Friday I don't even remember my own name, Silence? I could almost hear him calculating. Let me call Sienna, he said finally. We'll come over. Bring the papers. If you want to do this today, we'll do it today. Thank you. I made my voice small, grateful. Thank you, son. They arrived within the hour. I'd spent the intervening time preparing the stage, left my reading glasses in the bathroom, put my slippers on the wrong feet, spilled coffee grounds across the kitchen counter. Small details, the kind of chaos that accumulates when a man loses his grip on reality. Derek knocked twice before using his key. Dad, it's us. I shuffled into the foyer, moving slower than necessary. Derek wore a charcoal suit, briefcase in hand. Sienna stood beside him in a cream-colored dress, her expression arranged into sympathy. Oh, thank God you're here. I reached for Derek's arm, let myself lean. I've been trying to make breakfast, but everything smells wrong. It's okay, Dad. Derek guided me toward the living room. We're here now. Sienna followed her heels, clicking on hardwood. She'd brought a leather portfolio. I noticed her glance around the room, cataloging, already planning what to sell. I sat in my reading chair. Derek took the sofa. Sienna settled beside him, crossing her legs. Now, Derek said gently, you mentioned the papers, the power of attorney. You want to sign today? I think so. I don't know. I rubbed my temples. Derek, do you smell that? Smell what? The burning like rubber or chemicals. I turned toward the kitchen. Did you bring something Sienna's perfume? Sienna's smile didn't waver. I'm not wearing perfume today, Grant, but I can smell it so strong like burnt sugar. I sniffed the air, confused like the trash fire behind the restaurant when I was a boy. Derek exchanged a glance with Sienna. I saw the flicker of satisfaction. Dad, Derek said carefully, there's no smell. The house is fine. You're sure I'm sure? I let that sit. Let the implications settle. My senses weren't just failing. They were creating phantoms. Maybe you're right. I pulled at my collar. I'm sorry. I'm not thinking clearly. That's why we're here. Derek opened his briefcase and pulled out documents to help. This is the power of attorney. It gives me legal authority to manage the company while you're unwell. Your signature here, here, and here. I reached for the papers. My hand trembled, not entirely in act anymore. I picked up the pen Derek offered. Then I knocked over my water glass. It went everywhere across the coffee table, soaking into the documents, dripping onto the carpet. Derek lunged forward, but it was too late. The ink began to run, blurring signature lines into blue clouds. Dad! Derek grabbed the papers, shaking water off them. Jesus Christ, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I half rose from my chair, flailing. My hand just, "It's fine." Derek's jaw was tight. "Just sit down." But the damage was done. The documents were ruined. Sienna stood dabbing at her dress where water had splashed. Her expression had slipped. Just for a moment, I saw something cold underneath. "We'll need new papers," she said to Derek. "These are destroyed. I can print more on Monday." Derek was still trying to salvage them. "We can come back." "No." I cut him off. "Friday, let's do it. Friday like we planned." Derek looked up. "But you just said I know what I said." I waved vaguely. "But maybe you're right. Maybe I should wait. Do it properly at the board meeting." I forced myself to meet his eyes. "I want witnesses, Derek. I want it official. So nobody can say later that I wasn't in my right mind." This was the crucial moment. If Derek pushed too hard, I'd know he was desperate. But Sienna touched his arm. "Grant's right," she said smoothly. "Friday is better. With the board present, everything is witness documented. It protects you, Grant. And it protects Derek from anyone who might claim he coerced you." Smart woman. She understood that witnesses would make it harder to contest later. What she didn't understand was that I had no intention of signing anything. "Okay." Derek set down the ruined papers. "Friday. It is 2 honoraires, the conference room at the Grant House. Thank you for understanding." I slumped back. "I'm tired now." Of course, Derek stood. "We'll let you rest. Is there anything you need?" No. Daniel's coming by later." I waved them toward the door. "You two go. Enjoy your Saturday." Sienna collected her portfolio. At the door, she turned back. "Grant, about the board meeting. You should know that Brian Mitchell and Robert Hayes have expressed support for the transition. They understand it's what's best for the company." "That's good." I made my voice vague. "Good to have support. We all want what's best for you," she added. I watched her face, watched the way she touched Derek's back, proprietary. The way her eyes swept my house one more time, already calculating values, and I thought about the photograph in my file. Sienna 5 years ago working for Marcus Vail in Atlantic City. Sienna who'd appeared in Derek's life right when he needed someone. "Thank you, Sienna," I said. "You're very kind," she smiled. "Family takes care of family." They left. I watched from the window as Derek's Mercedes pulled out of the driveway, watched until they disappeared around the corner. Then I straightened up, rolled my shoulders. The tremor vanished from my hands. I walked back to the living room and picked up the water glass, refilled it in the kitchen, drank it down. My phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. Phase 1 complete, inventory mapped. Start moving Monday. I replied, "Confirmed. Derek took the bait. Friday is on." I looked at the ruined documents still spread across my coffee table. Derek's careful preparation destroyed by what he thought was his father's failing coordination. But it was Sienna who worried me more than Derek. Derek was motivated by greed and weakness. He was a tool easily manipulated. Sienna was different. Sienna was hungry. And the way she looked at Derek when she thought I wasn't watching the calculation in her eyes told me everything I needed to know. Derek thought he was the hunter, but Sienna was hunting bigger game. And Derek, my fool of a son, had no idea he was just the appetizer. 4 days. Sunday through Wednesday, I played the dying patriarch, while Daniel moved 30 years of secrets into a storage unit in Beaverton. Sunday morning, Derek arrived with pastries. He found me in the kitchen staring at the coffee maker like I'd forgotten how it worked. "Dad, you okay?" I turned slowly, as if surfacing from deep water. "Derek, when did you get here just now?" He set the pastry box on the counter. "Have you eaten? I don't remember." I reached for the coffee pot, then let my hand shake. The pot rattled against the mug. Coffee sloshed over the rim. "Here, let me." Derek took the pot from my hands. "Sit down." I watched him pour with the careful movements of someone handling a child. "How are you feeling?" he asked. Tired, I took a sip, then made a face. "This tastes wrong, like metal." Derek's expression was perfect sympathy, but I caught the flicker underneath. Satisfaction. What he didn't know was that my sense of taste had started returning 3 days ago. The zinc supplements were reversing the damage faster than he'd anticipated. That coffee didn't taste like metal. It tasted like coffee dark roast, slightly burnt. But Derek didn't need to know that. Monday, I forced myself to go to the Grant house. Daniel had texted, "Need you here. Keep suspicion away." He was right. If I stayed home, Derek might wonder. Chef Russo found me in the prep kitchen, standing before the spice rack. "Monsieur Whitmore, you are well." I picked up oregano, opened it, sniffed, made my face collapse into confusion. "Antoine, does this smell right to you?" He took the jar, inhaled. It is fresh." "Why, I can't smell anything." I picked up basil. "Or this nothing." Antoine's face crumpled. He'd worked for me 15 years. He knew what losing smell meant to a chef. "Monsieur, you should rest. We handle tonight's service." "Maybe you're right." I let my shoulders sag. "I just wanted to check inventory for Friday's board lunch. Everything is perfect, I promise." As I passed the dry storage room, I saw Daniel inside with Linda Chen. They were making notes on a clipboard, but I knew what they were really doing. Cataloging, mapping what needed to be moved. My senses were returning faster than expected. That morning I'd tasted the difference between house blend and Ethiopian roast. By afternoon I could smell garlic roasting 2 rooms away. 60% recovered. Maybe not full capacity, but getting there. Derek couldn't know. Not yet. Tuesday. Derek came by again, this time agitated. His phone kept buzzing. He'd pull it out. Glance, put it away. Pull it out again. The 4th time it rang, he stepped into the hallway. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I heard his tone sharp, defensive. When he returned, his jaw was tight. "Everything okay?" I asked from the couch. "Fine, just business." He sat across from me. "Dad, about Friday, you're still comfortable with this, with what? The power of attorney transferring control." I let confusion drift across my face. "Is that Friday? I thought that was next week." "No, Dad. This Friday day, after tomorrow. Have we talked about this?" I rubbed my forehead. "I'm sorry." The days blur together. His phone buzzed again. Something flickered in his expression. Desperation. Maybe fear Derek is something wrong, know nothing, but his hand shook as he put the phone away. I should go. He left quickly, too quickly. I waited 5 minutes, then called Daniel. "Something's wrong." "Derek's getting pressure. His phone won't stop. The casinos." Daniel said Marcus is tightening the screws. 4.2 million doesn't wait forever. How long until everything's moved 80% done? Tomorrow night we finish. Thursday, nothing left but decoys. Good. Keep going. Wednesday afternoon, I sat in the garden behind my house. October air crisp, leaves turning gold. I'd brought a blanket and a book, but I wasn't reading. I was listening. Derek's car had pulled up 20 minutes ago. He'd knocked, called my name, then apparently decided I was napping and let himself in. Now he was on the back deck, 10 FT from where I sat, with my eyes closed, head tilted back like I was dozing. His phone rang. "Yeah, it's me," Derek said, voice low, but not quite low enough. "No, he's asleep in the garden, he won't hear." Pause. Friday night after the board meeting, after he signs the trucks, come at 8:00 p.m. My heart rate spiked, but I kept my breathing slow. Everything. Derek continued. The recipe books, the training manuals, Mom's secret formulas, strip it all. The buyers lined up mass production company out of Cleveland. They'll turn Grant's techniques into cheap frozen dinners. I nearly opened my eyes. Liz's recipes, the ones she'd spent 20 years perfecting the ones that earned us our first Michelin star. Derek was going to sell them to a factory. What about the old man? Derek asked. Pause. Yeah, I know. But once the transfer's done, what's he going to do? He can barely remember his name. By the time he realizes it'll be too late, another pause. Longer this time. I don't care what Marcus wants. I care about clearing my debt. 4.2 million. Remember, that's what you said this would solve. Marcus on the other end. Marcus Vale pulling strings. Fine. Friday night, 8:00 p.m. Trucks at the back entrance of the grand house. Derek's voice hardened. And tell Cameron his chemicals worked perfectly. The old man's senses are gone. He didn't suspect a thing. Cameron confirmation that Cameron Stratton had provided the poison. Yeah, I'll see you at the board meeting. Make it look good. Derek laughed. The old man won't know what hit him. I heard footsteps. Derek walking back inside a door closing. I waited 5 minutes 10, then opened my eyes. The garden looked the same. Golden leaves, blue sky. But everything had changed. Derek wasn't just stealing the company, he was planning to strip it. Sell my family's legacy, 3 generations of techniques and recipes, to the highest bidder. Turn everything Liz and I had built into mass-produced garbage. And he was going to do it Friday night, right after I signed away control. I pulled out my phone and texted Daniel. Change of plans. Friday night, 8:00 p.m. Derek has trucks coming to the grand house. Make sure there's nothing left. Daniel's reply came immediately, already on it. By Thursday night, he'll find nothing but empty shelves. I stood from the garden chair. My knees didn't shake. My hands were steady. Friday was 2 days away. 2 days until Derek walked into that board meeting, expecting to take everything. 2 days until I showed him that the old man remembered just fine. Thursday night, Daniel and I would move the last of it. The most precious items, Liz's handwritten recipe journals, the technique manuals that had taken decades to perfect. By Friday morning, Derek would have nothing to steal but empty rooms. And by Friday afternoon, he'd understand exactly what he'd lost. Thursday, 11 p.m. The Grant house sat dark and empty. Daniel met me at the back entrance with 2 trucks and 3 people I'd known for decades. Chef Russo, Linda Chen, and Maria Santos, my pastry chef who had been with me since the beginning. No one spoke. We all knew what was at stake. I unlocked the door to the basement. The narrow staircase descended into darkness. I flipped the light switch, and fluorescent bulbs flickered to life, illuminating the archive. 60 years of accumulated knowledge filled these shelves. Recipe journals dating back to my father's first restaurant in 1965. Training manuals. I'd written when the Grant House opened technique documents Liz had spent 20 years perfecting supplier lists, proprietary methods, the molecular gastronomy experiments from 2008 that had earned us our second Michelin star. Everything that made the Whitmore collection valuable, everything Derek planned to sell to a factory in Cleveland tomorrow night. Where do we start? Daniel asked quietly. I walked to the far wall. Behind a false panel, the one only Daniel and I knew about, sat the vault. I entered the combination. The door swung open. Inside, leather-bound journals lined 3 shelves, my father's handwriting, my own and Liz's. I pulled out a recipe journal from 1992, the year we'd earned our first Michelin star. Her handwriting filled every page, precise and elegant, notes in the margins, corrections, innovations. On the inside cover, she'd written for Derek, when you're ready. With love, Mom. My throat tightened. Grant. Daniel's voice was soft. You okay? I traced my fingers over Liz's handwriting. He was never ready, Liz. He never wanted to be. I closed the journal and handed it to Daniel. Pack everything from the vault first. Those are irreplaceable. We worked in silence. Daniel and Linda carefully wrapped each journal in protective cloth. Maria and Chef Russo boxed the training manuals, the technique documents, the supplier contracts. I stood at the work table in the center of the room, surrounded by 60 years of my family's work, and I felt the weight of what Derek was trying to destroy. Not just recipes, not just business documents, legacy. My father had come to America with nothing. He had worked as a dishwasher for 10 years before opening his first restaurant. He taught me that cooking wasn't just about food, it was about respect. Respect for ingredients, respect for technique, respect for the people who'd come before you. Derek had no respect for any of it. Grant. Daniel appeared at my elbow. The vault's empty. What about the rest? I looked at the shelves lining the walls, hundreds of binders, thousands of pages. We replaced them, I said. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Replace them with decoys. I pulled out my phone and showed him the document I'd prepared 3 days ago. Generic recipes, the kind you find on cooking blogs. We print them, put them in identical binders, arrange them exactly as they are now. Understanding dawned on Daniel's face. And so when Derek's trucks come tomorrow night, they'll take boxes full of worthless paper. I smiled without humor. He'll sell generic marinara sauce recipes and basic roasting techniques to his Cleveland factory. By the time he realizes it'll be too late. That's brilliant. That's justice. We worked through the night while Daniel and the others moved the real archives to the trucks. I sat at a laptop printing replacement documents. Generic French mother sauces from culinary school textbooks, basic knife skills from cooking websites, standard sanitation procedures from food safety manuals, nothing proprietary, nothing valuable, nothing that would give anyone an edge in the restaurant business. But arranged in the same binders on the same shelves, it would look identical to what had been there before. By 3:00 a.m., the trucks were loaded. The real archives of her 60 years of Whitmore family knowledge were on their way to the climate-controlled storage unit in Beaverton. By 4:00 a.m., the basement looked exactly as it had at 11 p.m. Same shelves, same binders, same arrangement, but everything inside was worthless. I locked the vault closed, the false panel turned off the lights. Upstairs, Daniel checked the kitchen one final time. Everything's secure. The decoys are perfect. He won't know until it's too late. Good. I walked through the empty restaurant. The tables were set for tomorrow's board lunch. White tablecloths, crystal glasses, everything perfect for Derek's moment of triumph. Except there would be no triumph. I stopped at the host stand. Among the reservation books and seating charts sat a frame photograph. Liz and me on opening night 1987. She wore a blue dress. I wore a chef's coat stained with sauce from the dinner rush. We were both grinning like idiots. That had been the best night of my life. I picked up the photograph and carried it to the empty prep table where we used to test new dishes together. Set it down carefully. Tomorrow, I said to her photograph, Derek's going to learn what happens when you try to destroy something 3 generations built. He's going to learn that legacy isn't something you steal, it's something you earn. The photograph didn't answer, but I felt Liz's presence anyway. Felt her approval. Daniel locked the back door behind us. The trucks had already departed. The streets were empty. The streets. You should get some sleep, Daniel said. Tomorrow's going to be long. I'm not sure I can sleep. Try anyway. You need to be sharp for the board meeting. I nodded, watched Daniel drive away. Then I stood in the parking lot of the Grant house, looking up at the building I'd spent 40 years building. Tomorrow at 2 p.m., Derek would walk into the conference room, expecting to take control of this empire. Tomorrow at 2:15, he'd realize he'd been outmaneuvered. And tomorrow night at 8:00 p.m., when his trucks arrived to strip the basement, they'd find nothing but worthless paper. I climbed into my car. The dashboard clock read 4:37 a.m. In 9 and 2 hours, the board meeting would begin. In 9 to 2 hours, Derek would face the consequences of betting against a Whitmore. I drove home through empty streets. Portland was still sleeping, but I was wide awake. Tomorrow, we'd see who the old man really was. Friday morning, 7:00 a.m. I stood in front of my closet and pulled out the charcoal gray suit I'd had worn to Liz's funeral. It still fit perfectly. I dressed slowly. White shirt, black tie, the cufflinks Liz had given me for our 20th anniversary. Every detail mattered. Today wasn't just a board meeting, it was a reckoning. In the bathroom, I went through my morning ritual. Shaved carefully, splashed cold water on my face, looked at myself in the mirror. The man staring back at me didn't look like someone who'd been poisoned for 8 months. Didn't look weak or confused or dying. He looked ready. I made coffee in the kitchen, French press, dark roast. Brought the cup to my lips and tasted it fully. The bitterness, the chocolate notes, the slight acidity. My sense of taste had returned completely 48 hours ahead of schedule, according to the toxicologist's projections. The zinc supplements had worked better than expected. Derek had no idea. I carried my coffee to the living room. Liz's photograph sat on the mantel, the same one I'd placed in the Grant house last night. Different frame, same moment, opening night, 1987. I kept my promise I said to her image. I took care of Derek, just not the way you imagined. She smiled back at me, frozen in that moment of joy. He made his choices, Liz. I gave him every chance, every opportunity. But he chose Marcus's money over our legacy. He chose poison over conversation. I finished my coffee, set the cup down. Today I'm choosing justice. At my desk, I assembled the evidence. The USB drive containing Parker security footage. The PI's report connecting Derek's debts to Marcus Vale. The toxicology results, the photograph of Sienna working for Marcus 5 years ago. And the recording. Wednesday afternoon, while Derek thought I was sleeping in the garden, I'd had my phone in my pocket recording every word of his conversation. Every confession about the trucks, the recipes, the plan to strip everything. The old man won't know what hit him. I copied the recording to a second USB drive. One for the board, one for Detective Morrison. Frank Morrison had been with Portland PD for 30 years. We'd worked together on a charity event 5 years ago. He was honest, thorough, and most importantly, he believed in evidence. Yesterday I'd called him, Frank Grant Whitmore. I need to report a crime, multiple crimes actually, attempted murder, conspiracy, fraud. Grant, these are serious accusations. I have evidence, video, audio, financial records. I'm presenting it to my board of directors tomorrow at 2 p.m. I'd like you to be there in the building, at least ready to make arrests if necessary. There had been a long pause. Then send me what you have. I'll review it. I'd sent him everything. He'd called back an hour later. Grant, this is solid. I'll have officers in the parking garage. When you're ready, give us the signal. Now I packed both USB drives into my briefcase, added the printed reports, the timeline, everything the board would need to see. I checked my watch. 8:30 a.m. 5 and 2 hours until the meeting. I walked out to my car. The morning was crisp and clear, the kind of October day that makes you remember why you live in Portland. Mount Hood visible in the distance, snow-capped and perfect. I drove through the city, slowly past the hospital, where Derek was born, past the elementary school, where he'd learned to read, past the high school, where he'd graduated with honors. I remembered him at 6, standing on a stool in my kitchen, carefully stirring a pot of marinara sauce. His tongue stuck out in concentration, his small hands gripping the wooden spoon. Dad, is it ready? Not yet, buddy. Taste it. Tell me what it needs. He tasted it carefully, thought for a moment. Salt. Good. How much is just a pinch? Perfect. That's exactly right. I'd been so proud of him that day, so certain he'd follow in my footsteps. I remembered him at 12, sullen and angry after Liz had gotten her diagnosis. He'd stopped coming to the restaurant, stopped asking about cooking, started spending time with friends I didn't know. Derek, you want to help with the new menu? I'm busy doing what? Just stuff. You wouldn't understand. I remembered him at 17 the night before he left for college. We'd sat in the living room, not speaking the distance between us, already too wide to cross. Your mother wanted you to have this. I'd handed him Liz's recipe journal. She spent 20 years perfecting these techniques. He'd taken it without looking at it. Thanks, Derek. This is important. This is legacy. This is I know, Dad. Legacy. You've been saying that my whole life. He had left the next morning. The journal had stayed on his shelf, unopened. I'd lost my son years before Marcus Vale ever entered the picture. Before the gambling, before the poison. I'd lost him to resentment and entitlement and a hollow place inside him that love couldn't fill. Liz had been right about that. I pulled into the parking garage beneath the Grant house at 1:45 p.m. Detective Morrison stood near the elevator bay with 3 unformed officers. Granty shook my hand. You ready for this? I've been ready for 2 months. We'll be here. When you're ready, text me. Just one word now. Understood. I stepped into the elevator. Pressed 15. The conference room was on the top floor with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The elevator rose smoothly. I watched the numbers climb. 8, 9, 10. My heart was steady. My hands didn't shake. 12, 13, or a 14. The doors opened on 15. I stepped out into the hallway. Through the glass walls of the conference room, I could see them gathered. Derek in his best suit sitting at the right hand of the head chair. Sienna beside him, cream dress and predatory smile. Brian Mitchell and Robert Hayes, the board members Derek had courted. Linda Chen, loyal to the end, sitting as far from Derek as possible. Cameron Stratton standing near the window, the man who'd provided the poison. And at the head of the table in my chair sat Marcus Vale. Of course Marcus would be here. This was his triumph, too. His 20-year revenge finally coming to fruition. I pushed open the conference room door, every head turned. Derek's face lit up. Dad, you made it. Wouldn't miss it, I said, quietly. I walked to the opposite end of the table, set down my briefcase. Met Marcus's eyes across the length of polished mahogany. He smiled at me, victorious, satisfied. I smiled back. Checkmate, I said. I stepped into the conference room. Derek half rose from his seat. Dad, you're early. Am I? I walked to the head of the table where Marcus sat. Didn't shuffle, didn't lean. Walked with the steady gait of a man who knew exactly where he was going. The room went silent. Derek's smile faltered. Sienna's eyes narrowed. Cameron shifted near the window. Grant, Marcus said smoothly. We were just discussing the transition. Derek tells me you've been having health difficulties. Did he? I set my briefcase down. Funny, my senses seemed to have returned. All of them. Derek stood. Dad, what are you? Sit down, Derek. Something in my voice made him obey. I turned to Marcus. We haven't been formally introduced, though I imagine you've been quite involved in my family's business? Marcus extended his hand. Marcus Vale. I've been consulting with Derek about expansion opportunities. I didn't take his hand. His smile tightened. I opened my briefcase and pulled out 2 decanters. Crystal imported the kind we used for important celebrations. Before we begin, I said I'd like to honor a Whitmore tradition. We never close a deal without sharing wine. Dad, that's not necessary, Derek started. I insist. I set wine glasses in front of each person. Derek, Sienna Marcus, Cameron, Brian Mitchell, Robert Hayes, Linda Chen. This vintage is special, I said, uncoring the first decanter. From my personal collection, I poured carefully. For Linda, Brian, and Robert, 3 people I trusted, I poured from the left decanter a 20-year Bordeaux. For Derek and Cameron, I poured from the right decanter, the one I'd prepared this morning for Marcus and Sienna water. Please, I said, taste it. Tell me what you think. Brian lifted his glass. First swirled it, inhaled. Oak cherry, beautiful tannins. This is extraordinary, Grant. Linda nodded. Blackberry hint of tobacco perfectly balanced. Robert's smooth finish matured beautifully. I smiled. Thank you, Derek Cameron. What do you taste? Derek swirled his glass like I taught him when he was 12. Inhaled deeply. Oak cherry earth complex. Cameron tasted his rich, dark fruit blackberry. Very smooth. I let the silence stretch. You're tasting industrial zinc chelator mixed with sulfite receptor blockers, I said quietly. The same poison I've been ingesting for 8 months. The same compounds that destroyed my sense of taste and smell. The same chemicals Derek has been putting in my food since February. The room went absolutely still. Derek's glass froze halfway to his lips. What you're tasting poison, Derek. And describing it as pleasant, which tells me something fascinating. I walked slowly around the table. Your senses are fine. You're not tasting what's in that glass. You're tasting what you expect to taste. That's insane. Derek set the glass down hard. As Dad. You're confused. I pulled out my phone, pressed play. Derek's voice filled the room. Friday night after he signs. The trucks come at 8 p.m. Everything. The recipe books, Mom's secret formulas, Strip It All, mass production company out of Cleveland. Derek's face went white. Tell Cameron his chemicals worked perfectly. The old man's senses are gone. He didn't suspect a thing. I stopped the recording, looked at Cameron Stratton. Pacific Chemical Group. I said the only place in Oregon that manufactures zinc chelators in the specific concentration found in my blood work. You provided them, didn't you? Cameron said nothing. You've blamed me for 17 years since Jessica died. Since my son got your daughter pregnant and abandoned her. Cameron's jaw clenched. You don't get to say her name? Jessica, I said it anyway. 22 years old, pregnant, alone. She killed herself because Derek walked away. Dad. Derek's voice cracked. I didn't know. You knew? Cameron's voice was cold. You told her to deal with it. Those were your exact words. And when she couldn't, when the weight of it crushed her, you'd moved on to the next girl. Derek's mouth opened, closed. No defense came. I turned to Marcus. 20 years you've waited. 20 years since I exposed you for plagiarizing recipes. It cost you a Michelin star, your reputation. You rebuilt, but you never forgave. Marcus's expression didn't change. Ancient history. Is it I pulled out the PI's report, Royal Flush Holdings, your casino corporation. Derek owes you $4.2 million, debt you encouraged, debt you used as leverage to turn my son into a weapon. I pulled out the photograph. Sienna in Atlantic City 5 years ago. You planted her in his life, encouraged every bad decision, got Derek so deep he'd do anything, including poison his father. Sienna's hand tightened on her water glass. Why both of them? Brian Mitchell asked quietly. Why pour poison for Derek and Cameron? Because Derek's been poisoning me with Cameron's chemicals for 8 months. I wanted them to taste what I've tasted. I looked at Derek. It's not actually poison, it's harmless. But I wanted to prove you don't even know what you've done. You can't recognize your own weapon when you taste it. Derek's face crumpled. Marcus stood. This is quite a story, but stories aren't evidence, aren't they? I pulled out the USB drive. Security footage from the tasting room last Friday. Derek pouring chemicals into my wine. Sienna helping. Both of you laughing. I plugged the drive into the display. The footage played on the screen. Derek reaching into his jacket, the vial, the pour. Sienna creating a distraction. Derek mimicking my tremor, both of them laughing. When it ended, the silence was absolute. Why Linda Chen's voice broke? Why would they do this? Because Marcus wanted revenge. Cameron wanted revenge and Derek wanted money. I looked at my son. Isn't that right? Derek's hands shook. And Dad, I can explain. Explain what? How you spent 8 months poisoning me. How you plan to steal everything and sell my family's recipes to a factory. How trucks were coming tonight at 8 p.m. Derek's eyes widened. How did you? I know everything, Derek. I've known for 2 months. I've been playing weak, so you'd feel confident. So you'd make mistakes, so you'd expose everyone involved. I pulled out the medical reports, the blood tests, the toxicology results. 8 months of documentation, zinc depletion, sulfite sensitivity, progressive sensory loss, all consistent with deliberate poisoning. I spread the documents across the table, and here I place the timeline. 20 years ago, Marcus loses his Michelin star. 17 years ago, Jessica dies. 5 years ago, Sienna appears right after working for Marcus. 3 years ago, Derek's gambling debt begins. 8 months ago, the poisoning starts. I looked around the table at Marcus, his confidence cracking, at Cameron rigid with rage, at Sienna calculating her exit, at Derek broken and trembling. This wasn't random. This was orchestrated, a 20-year revenge plot, using my son as the weapon. You can't prove Marcus began. I already have. I pulled out my phone. Detective Morrison is in the parking garage with 3 officers. I can call them up right now. Marcus's smile vanished completely. Sienna stood. I'm leaving. Sit down, I said. You can't keep me here. No, but I can tell everyone about Jessica. I looked at Cameron. Tell me, Cameron, did you know Jessica had a child? The room froze. Cameron's face went white. Well, we haven't gotten to the interesting part yet, I said softly. The part about your granddaughter. Cameron collapsed into his chair. The name Jessica hung in the air like smoke. What did you say? His voice was barely a whisper. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a photograph, placed it on the table. A young woman, 22 years old, dark hair in a ponytail chef's coat, bright smile standing in the Grant house kitchen, holding a whisk. Jessica Stratton, I said quietly. She worked for me 17 years ago. Sous chef, one of the most talented young cooks I'd ever trained. Cameron stared at the photograph. His hands trembled as he picked it up. She and Derek started dating in the spring. By summer, she was pregnant. I kept my voice even. Derek told her to deal with it. Then he left for a semester abroad. When he came back, Jessica was gone. She killed herself? Cameron said, voice breaking. September 19th, she was my little girl, my only child. I know, and I'm sorry. Sorry. Cameron's head snapped up. Your son destroyed her. He got her pregnant and threw her away like garbage. I didn't know I said. Derek never told me, never mentioned her name. I only found out 2 months ago when I traced the poison back to your company. Derek sat frozen, face white. I didn't know she was going to. Didn't know she... You didn't think at all. Cameron spat. You told her to deal with it. Those were your exact words, like she was a problem to be solved instead of a human being carrying your child. Cameron, I said quietly. There's more? Jessica didn't just leave a suicide note. I pulled out an envelope inside a birth certificate dated 17 years ago, 2 weeks before Jessica's death. Emma Stratton, born August 30th. Mother Jessica Stratton. Father Derek Whitmore. The room went absolutely silent. Cameron's hands shook as he took the certificate. Emma. She named her Emma. That was my mother's name. Your granddaughter, I said. 8 years old now, living with Jessica's sister Lauren and Eugene. Lauren has been raising her since Jessica died. Derek made a sound like he'd been punched. I have a daughter. You have a daughter, I confirmed. Jessica gave birth 2 weeks before she died. She tried to contact you multiple times. You never responded, so she left Emma with her sister and ended her life. Cameron was crying now, silent tears running down his face as he stared at the birth certificate. And why didn't Lauren contact me? Why didn't she tell me I had a granddaughter? Because after Jessica died, you cut off her entire family. Blame them for not seeing the signs. You were so consumed with rage you didn't see what was right in front of you. Cameron closed his eyes. I could have known her. I could have been part of her life. But here's what you also didn't see. I pulled out certified mail receipts, 12 of them. 10 years ago, after my wife died, I sent you 12 letters over 2 years. Every letter asked for reconciliation, for a chance to talk. I laid them on the table. Each dated, each delivered. I tried to reach you, Cameron. I didn't know about Jessica then, but I knew something had broken between us. I wanted to fix it. Cameron stared at the receipts. His voice came out hollow. I received them and I burned them. He looked up at me. Every single one. I didn't even read them. I saw your name and I burned them. I pulled out a photocopy. This was the 12th letter, the last one I sent. I handed it to him. Cameron took it with shaking hands. Read it aloud, his voice barely audible. Cameron, I've just learned about Jessica. Derek never told me. If I'd known I would have helped her, I would have made him do right by her. I'm so sorry for your loss. If there's anything I can do, anything at all, please let me know. Grant? Cameron's face crumpled. You tried to help, and His voice broke. I never gave you the chance. I could have known about Emma. We could have helped raise her together. Instead, I spent 17 years poisoning you. Yes, you did. The silence stretched heavy, irreversible. I turned to address the whole room. The gambling debts. Derek owes $4.2 million across 3 casinos. Royal Flush in Atlantic City, Silver R in Las Vegas, Golden Crown in Portland. I pulled out the corporate filings. All 3 casinos are shell companies. All 3 trace back to the Vail collection. Marcus's jaw tightened. You've held Derek's debt for 3 years? I continued. You found him when he was vulnerable. A gambling addict with father issues and no way out. You paid his first debts, became his mentor, his friend. You told him I didn't trust him, didn't love him, planted seeds of resentment every time you met. Derek stared at Marcus now, realization dawning on his face. You extended credit he couldn't afford, encouraged him to bet bigger, lose more until he owed you so much he'd do anything to clear it. I pulled out Sienna's photograph from Atlantic City 5 years ago, including accepting the woman you planted in his life. Derek turned to Sienna. His face was white. What is he talking about? You worked for Marcus 5 years ago, I said. Hostess at his Atlantic City restaurant. Then you disappeared from employment records until you reappeared in Derek's life 3 years ago, right when he needed someone most. I pulled out bank records. Wire transfers from Marcus Vail to you, $20,000 a month for 3 years, $720,000 total. Derek stood up slowly. You were paid. You were paid to be with me. Sienna finally looked at him. Derek, everything we had, the relationship, the marriage, all of it you were paid. It started as a job, Sienna said carefully. Marcus needed someone close to you, someone who could monitor the situation, make sure the plan stayed on track. The plan to poison my father. The plan to get Marcus what he's owed, Sienna corrected. And you, Derek's voice was barely audible. What were you waiting for? Sienna looked at him. Something cold flickered behind her eyes. I was waiting for the insurance money, she said simply. The room went completely silent. I pulled out the final document. Life insurance policy, $15 million insured Derek Whitmore, beneficiary Sienna Whitmore. Derek staggered backward. You were going to kill me. After the transfer went through, Sienna said calmly. After you signed over your father's company and paid Marcus back, after everything was secure, an accident, probably something tragic. The grieving widow inherits everything. Her voice was matter-of-fact, clinical. You've done this before, I said. Haven't you? Sienna smiled. Once Atlantic City 5 years ago, a casino executive heart attack, a very sad $6 million payout. Jesus Christ. Brian whispered. Derek was shaking. You never loved me. None of it was real? No, Sienna said it wasn't. Then why Derek's voice broke? Why 3 years of pretending? Because 15 million requires patience, Sienna said. And because you were useful weak enough to manipulate desperate enough to poison your own father. Exactly what we needed. She picked up her purse. Now, if you'll excuse me, sit down, I said. You can't keep me here. Detective Morrison, I said into my phone. We're ready. Sienna's face finally changed. The mask dropped. Fear flickered underneath. You called the police 20 minutes ago when you tried to leave the first time. They've been listening to everything through the conference phone system. The door opened. Detective Morrison walked in with 3 uniformed officers. Sienna Whitmore. Morrison said, You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder fraud and attempted insurance fraud. C didn't run, just stood there as the officer moved behind her and cuffed her hands. As they led her toward the door, she looked back at Derek one final time. For what it's worth, she said, You were the easiest mark I ever worked. Then she was gone. Derek collapsed into his chair. His whole world, everything he'd believed for 3 years, shattered in the space of 30 minutes. She was paid, he whispered. She never loved me. She was going to kill me. Yes, I said quietly. Derek looked up at me. His face was completely destroyed. Dad, we're not done yet, I said. Marcus Vale sat at the far end of the conference table, perfectly still, his hands folded in front of him, like a man watching theater. While Cameron Stratton's face had drained of color at the mention of his granddaughter, while Derek trembled in his chair, while Sienna's mask had finally cracked, Marcus simply smiled. Impressive, Grant, he said, his voice smooth as aged whiskey. Truly impressive. The wine trap, the recordings, the security footage. You've been busy these past 2 months. I studied him carefully. This was the man who'd orchestrated everything, the gambling debts, the poison, the destruction of my family, and he looked utterly at peace. That disturbed me more than Derek's betrayal ever could. You're not surprised, I observed. Surprised number. Marcus leaned back, completely relaxed, despite Detective Morrison waiting outside. Disappointed, perhaps. I thought you'd confront Derek privately. Maybe disinherit him quietly. This. He gestured at the room. This is more theatrical than I expected from you, Grant. When did you become so dramatic? When my son started poisoning me on your orders. Orders? Marcus laughed, a genuine sound that made my skin crawl. I never ordered anything. I simply provided opportunities. Derek made his own choices. Didn't you? Derek's head snapped up his face, twisted with confusion and rage. You told me he deserved it. You said he destroyed your career, that he'd do the same to me if I didn't act first. I said many things, Marcus replied calmly, most of them true. Grant did destroy my career 20 years ago. He did expose my recipe adaptations. Let's not call it plagiarism. That's so crude. And yes, I did lose my Michelin star, my restaurant, and my reputation. He turned to me, his eyes cold. But I rebuilt, didn't I, bigger than before? The Vail Collection hotels, casinos, restaurants across the Pacific Northwest. While you stayed here cooking in your little Pearl District establishment, I built an empire. An empire built on gambling addicts and extortion, I said. An empire built on understanding human weakness, Marcus corrected. And your son Grant is spectacularly weak. It took me less than 6 months to find him drowning in debt at one of my tables in Reno. 6 months to become his confidant. 6 months to plant the first seed. Your father doesn't respect you. He never will. Derek made a sound like a wounded animal. You manipulated me. I showed you the truth. Marcus's voice sharpened for the first time. Every word I told you was accurate. Your father never trusted you to run this business. He was always looking for someone better, someone more worthy. Isn't that right, Grant? Weren't you already grooming little Parker Jensen to take over? The room went silent. Derrick stared at me, and I saw the moment the final piece clicked into place for him. That's not, I started. Don't lie to him now, Marcus interrupted. At least give him that courtesy. You've been training Parker for 2 years. Everyone in this industry knows it. Derrick was never your heir. He was your disappointment. I wanted to deny it, but Marcus was right. I had been preparing Parker even before I knew about the poison, and Derrick knew it. This is exactly what I wanted. Marcus continued, his calm restored. Not just your death, Grant. That would have been too easy, too clean. I wanted you to suffer the way I suffered. I wanted you to lose everything that mattered: your health, your son, your legacy, your reputation. I wanted the Grant house to become a cautionary tale, the chef whose own son hated him enough to kill him. Except I didn't die, I said. No. Marcus tilted his head, studying me like a chess opponent who'd made an unexpected move. You didn't, and that, I admit, is my miscalculation. I underestimated 2 things: Parker Jensen's integrity and your capacity for deception. You played dead very convincingly, Grant. When did you know? 2 months ago? Blood tests showed severe zinc depletion. And you said nothing. You pretended to deteriorate while investigating. Marcus actually looked impressed. That takes discipline. That takes rage. I respect that. I don't want your respect. No, you want justice. Boring. Marcus stood, straightening his jacket. But here's the part you haven't figured out yet, Grant. Here's the piece that's going to keep you awake at night. He walked to the window, looking out over Portland. In the tasting room, that charming little wine bar where Derrick took you every week, where Parker worked, where every poisoning was captured on camera. Who do you think owns it? My blood went cold. That's right, Marcus said softly. It's mine. Has been for 3 years. I bought it specifically for this purpose. Every camera, every angle, every moment of Derrick poisoning you was recorded on my servers. Why do you think I chose that location? Why do you think Derrick insisted on meeting you there? Insurance. I breathed. Exactly. If Derrick got caught, I had leverage. If you discovered the plot early, I could blackmail you into silence. Drop the charges or I release footage of your son attempting to murder you to every news outlet in America. Your precious reputation destroyed forever. Marcus turned back to me. But you were clever. You waited until you had enough evidence to bury all of us. Derrick, Cameron, Sienna, and me. You built a case so airtight that my insurance policy became worthless. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. That's why I'm actually standing here. I could have disappeared. I have resources, connections, offshore accounts. But I wanted to see you face to face one more time. I wanted you to know, even in defeat, I won. You're going to prison. I said, for 18 years, probably less with good behavior, Marcus acknowledged. But your son tried to kill you, Grant. That reality will follow you forever. Every interview, every award, every mention of your name will include the footnote, his son poisoned him for money. Your legacy is tainted, your family is destroyed, and I did that. Not directly, but I orchestrated it. That knowledge is my victory. Derrick suddenly lunged across the table toward Marcus, but Daniel Reed and another board member grabbed him. You destroyed my life. You used me. You destroyed your own life the moment you walked into my casino, Marcus said coldly. I just showed you the path. You chose to walk it. I stood pulling out my phone. You're right about one thing, Marcus. You did show Derrick a path, but you made one critical error. Oh, and what's that? You assumed I cared more about reputation than truth? I pressed a button on my phone. Detective Morrison, we're ready. The doors burst open. 4 officers entered Morrison at the front. "Marcus Vale," Morrison announced, "you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, extortion, fraud, and racketeering. You have the right to remain silent." As they handcuffed him, Marcus looked at me one last time. 20 years, Grant. I waited 20 years for this. It was worth every moment. "No," I said quietly. "It wasn't because in 20 years I built something real. I loved my wife. I trained hundreds of chefs. I created food that brought joy to thousands of people. You spent 20 years nursing hatred. We're not the same." Marcus's smile finally faltered. As they led him away, I saw something flicker across his face. Not regret exactly, but perhaps the first whisper of doubt. He dedicated 2 decades to destroying me, and in the end I was still standing. Derek collapsed into his chair, his face in his hands. "Dad, I'm so sorry." "I'm so Derek." I interrupted, my voice heavy with exhaustion. "Do you want to know the saddest part of all this? Marcus was right. I didn't trust you to run the grand house. But it wasn't because you weren't talented enough. It's because you never loved it the way it needs to be loved. You saw it as an inheritance, not a responsibility. And that's not something Marcus taught you. That's something I failed to teach you. I can change. Maybe you can. You have 7 years to figure that out." I turned to Morrison. "He's ready to be arrested now." As they took Derek away, my son, my greatest failure, I remained at the window, staring out at the city where I had built everything and lost so much. Daniel Reed approached quietly. "You okay?" "No," I admitted, "but I will be." Outside, the spring rain had started falling. The city looked clean, washed, new. It was time to rebuild. Time stopped. Sienna's finger rested on the trigger. Morrison's gun was already aimed. Derek stood between them, hands raised. "Don't," Derek said. His voice was steady. "Emma doesn't deserve to have both parents in prison." I froze. "Emma, who's Emma?" Derek turned to look at me. His face was destroyed, but something else was there now. Something like resolve. "My daughter," he said quietly. 8 years old, living with Lauren Hayes and Eugene. I abandoned them, just like I abandoned Jessica. The room went silent. Sienna knew. Derek continued. "She found out 6 months ago, threatened her. Said if I didn't help poison you, she'd hurt Emma. Make it look like an accident." He looked at Sienna. "I thought I was protecting my daughter. I thought if I did what you wanted, you'd leave her alone." "But you were never going to worry you." Sienna's gun didn't waver. Derek shut up. "No." Derek took a step toward her. "I've been weak my whole life. Weak with Jessica. Weak with Dad. Weak with you. But not anymore. Emma deserves better than a father who poisons people to save himself. Derek, I'm warning you. Shoot me." Derek said, "Go ahead." "But Morrison's already aimed at you. The moment you pull that trigger, you're dead. And if you're dead, you can't collect the $35 million. Sienna's eyes flickered. "Calculation." Derek took another step. "You taught me something, Sienna. Some people are born with a hollow place inside them that nothing can fill. I'm one of those people, but Emma isn't, and I won't let you anywhere near her." In one motion, Derek grabbed the gun barrel and twisted. Sienna tried to pull the trigger, but Derek had his hand wrapped around the cylinder. It couldn't fire. Morrison moved. 2 seconds later, Sienna was on the ground gun, skittering across the floor. Morrison's knee in her back. "Don't move," Morrison said. He cuffed her. "Sienna Whitmore, you're under arrest for attempted murder conspiracy to commit murder fraud and the murder of James Blackwell in Atlantic City 5 years ago." Sienna's eyes widened. "You can't prove we can," Morrison said. "Atlantic City PD reopened the case, found traces of potassium chloride in the exhumed body. Same method you plan to use on Derek and Marcus. You're looking at life without parole. Without." As they let her out, Sienna looked back at Derek. You could have had everything. You were going to kill me, Derrick said quietly. Eventually, Sienna agreed, but we could have had a few good years first. Then she was gone. Marcus went next. Morrison read him his rights. Marcus Vale. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, extortion, and racketeering. Marcus didn't resist. Just stood there, shoulders slumped, 20 years of planning destroyed in 30 minutes. I wanted to see you broken, he said to me. I wanted you to know what it felt like to lose everything. I do, I said quietly. You succeeded. My son tried to kill me. My business partner betrayed me. My legacy nearly became frozen dinners. You won, Marcus. Then why don't I feel better, Marcus asked. Because revenge doesn't fill the hollow places, I said. It just makes them bigger. They led Marcus out. Cameron went without a fight. He'd been sitting silently since Emma's reveal, staring at the birth certificate. I don't want a lawyer, he said. I did it. I provided the chemicals. I knew what they were for. I wanted Grant to suffer. Cameron, I wanted justice for Jessica. Cameron interrupted. His voice was hollow. I thought if you suffered the way I suffered, it would make the pain stop. But it didn't. It just made me into someone Jessica would have been ashamed of. Morrison cuffed him. Cameron Stratton, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder and providing materials for the commission of a crime. As they let him pass me, Cameron stopped. Emma, can I see her? I'll arrange it, I said. After the trial, she deserves to know her grandfather. Cameron's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. Then he was gone too. Derrick was last. He stood in the middle of the empty conference room and held out his hands. I don't deserve mercy, he said. I don't deserve forgiveness. I poisoned you for 8 months. I tried to steal everything you built. I betrayed you in every way possible, Derrick. No, let me finish. His voice cracked. You were right about all of it. I was weak. I was resentful. I blamed you for loving your work more than you love me. But the truth is, I never gave you a reason to be proud of me. He looked at me. Really looked at me? I'm sorry, Dad, for everything. For Jessica, for Emma, for the poison, for all of it. I felt tears on my face. You're still my son. That doesn't go away. Even after everything you've done, Derrick's face crumpled. I don't deserve. No, you don't. But that's what family means. It's not about deserving. It's about showing up. And you showed up today. You stopped Sienna. You told the truth. That counts for something. Morrison stepped forward. Grant Whitmore, you're under arrest for attempted murder conspiracy to commit fraud and theft of intellectual property. Derrick nodded, held out his hands for the cuffs. Emma is in Eugene, he said as Morrison cuffed him. With Lauren Hayes, she's a teacher, good person. She's been raising Emma since Jessica died. I know, I said. I found her 2 weeks ago. Had a private investigator track her down. Derrick's eyes widened. You knew about Emma? I've known for 2 weeks. I was planning to contact Lauren after the board meeting. Will you tell Emma about me? Derrick's voice broke. Not the good parts, the truth. Tell her what I did, what I became. So she knows what not to do. I'll tell her, I said, but I'll also tell her about the day you were 6 years old and stood on a stool in my kitchen, learning to make marinara sauce. How carefully you stirred it. How proud you were when you got it right. Derrick was crying. Now that doesn't make up for no, it doesn't. But Emma deserves to know her father wasn't always broken, that there was good in you once. Morrison started leading Derrick toward the door. Dad, Derrick called back. Tell Emma that her grandfather was a better man than her father ever was. Then he was gone. The conference room was empty. Just me and Daniel standing in the wreckage. You won, Grant, Daniel said quietly. All of them. Sienna, Marcus, Cameron, Derrick, all arrested. You won. I looked around at the empty chairs. I destroyed my own son. I had him arrested. What kind of victory is that? The kind where you survive, Daniel said. The kind where your legacy survives. The kind where Emma grows up knowing her grandfather fought for what was right. I sank into a chair exhausted. Liz would know what to say, I said. Daniel reached into his briefcase, pulled out a USB drive. Thomas Bradford gave this to me this morning, Daniel said. Said it was time. Liz's video testament. I stared at the USB drive, the one she'd recorded a month before she died. I've watched it 3 times already, I said. I know what it says. Then watch it a 4th time, Daniel said, because maybe this time you'll hear something different. He set the USB drive on the table. I'll be downstairs. Take your time. Then I was alone. Just me and the USB drive and the ghost of my wife's voice, waiting to tell me what I already knew. That family isn't blood. That legacy is what you build, not what you inherit. That sometimes the hardest thing to do is let go. I picked up the USB drive, but I didn't plug it in. Not yet. First, I had a granddaughter to meet. Thomas Bradford's law office sat on the 23rd floor of a building overlooking the Willamette River. The view was spectacular. I didn't notice it. I sat in the private viewing room with Thomas and Daniel. The lights were dim. A monitor sat on the desk in front of us. Thomas held the USB drive in his hand. His fingers trembled slightly. Liz recorded this 3 days before she died, he said quietly. She made me promise to only show it to you if Derek betrayed you. She hoped God. She hoped so much that I'd never have to. We handed me the drive. But here we are. I took it, felt the weight of it. This small piece of plastic contained my wife's final words. Words she'd recorded knowing what our son might become. Are you ready? Thomas asked. I wasn't, but I nodded anyway. Thomas plugged in the drive, pressed play. The screen flickered. Then Liz appeared. She was in our bedroom in the hospital bed. We'd moved there during her final weeks. The cancer had ravaged her body. She was thin, fragile, her hair gone from the chemotherapy, but her eyes were sharp, clear, the same eyes that had seen through every excuse, every lie, every weak moment I'd ever had. Grant, my love, she said. Her voice was weak but steady. If you're watching this, it means Derek has done something terrible. I felt Daniel's hand on my shoulder. Couldn't look away from the screen. I've seen the darkness in him since he was 19 years old. Liz continued. That summer he came home from college. Remember you were expanding the restaurant, working 18-hour days. You didn't notice. She paused, took a breath. He stole $50,000 from the restaurant safe. I caught him, confronted him. He cried, apologized, promised he'd never do it again. He said he had gambling debts that he was scared to tell you. $50,000 I hadn't known, hadn't even suspected. I didn't tell you? Liz said, her voice cracked. I thought love could change him. I thought if I gave him a second chance, if I showed him mercy, he'd become the man I knew he could be. Tears were running down her face on the screen, down my face in the room. I was wrong, Grant. My silence enabled him. My love made him weaker instead of stronger. I protected him from consequences. And in doing that, I helped create the man who betrayed you. She wiped her eyes, steadied herself. I'm so sorry for not telling you, for not being strong enough to let him face what he'd done. For choosing hope over honesty. The camera shook slightly. Someone, Thomas, probably adjusting it. I've instructed Thomas to modify my estate, Liz said. Her voice was stronger now, determined. If Derek betrays you, he gets nothing. Not a dollar, not a recipe, not a single thing I've built. She looked directly into the camera, directly at me. Everything I've created, every recipe, every technique, every penny, it all goes to you, Grant. To do with as you see fit. You decide what happens to my legacy. Not Derek, not blood. You. She paused. Let that sink in. Find someone worthy. Someone who values integrity over inheritance. Someone who sees cooking as a craft, not a commodity. Someone who understands that legacy isn't about what you're born into. It's about what you build. Her hand reached toward the camera, touched the lens. Don't give it to bloodline, Grant. Give it to character. That's what matters. That's what lasts. The screen showed her sitting back exhausted from the effort, Derek. She said, her voice softer now. If you're hearing this, then you've done what I feared you would. And I want you to know Mom loved you. I always will. But love isn't enough without accountability. Love without consequences isn't love. It's enabling. She was crying again. I tried to save you from yourself. I failed and I'm sorry. But this is where it ends. You made your choices. Now you face them. A long pause. Liz gathering herself for the final words. Grant, she said, forgive yourself. You were a good father. You gave Derek every opportunity. You showed him excellence. You taught him craft. You offered him a legacy worth having. Her voice broke completely. Derek chose to reject it. That's not your failure. That's his. Don't carry his guilt. Don't let his betrayal destroy you. She smiled. That smile I'd fallen in love with 40 years ago. Build something beautiful from these ashes. Find someone who deserves what we created. Give them the chance Derek threw away. She reached toward the camera again, her hand filling the frame. I love you, Grant. I always will in this life and whatever comes after. You were my best decision, my greatest joy, my home. Her hand dropped. Now go build something that lasts. The screen went black. The room was silent, except for the sound of me crying. Thomas and Daniel said nothing. Just let me sit there with the ghost of my wife's voice still echoing in my ears. She knew I finally said my voice was rough, broken. 10 years ago, she knew what he was. She hoped she was wrong, Thomas said quietly. Every day for 10 years. She hoped Derek would prove her wrong. That's why she made me promise to wait to only show you this if he actually betrayed you. She protected him, I said. Even knowing what he was capable of, she still protected him. She protected you both, Daniel corrected. She gave Derek 10 years to change 10 years to become someone better, and she gave you the truth when you needed it most. I looked at the blank screen. Imagine Liz sitting there 3 days before her death, using her last strength to record this message. To give me permission to let go. Character over bloodline, I said quietly. That's what she wanted. That's what she always wanted, Thomas said. Liz believed in earned legacy in choosing your family based on who they are, not who they're related to. I stood, walked to the window, looked out over Portland, over the city where I'd built my empire, where Liz and I had created something worth having. She was right, I said, about all of it. Derek wasn't ready. Maybe he never would have been. And I spent years trying to force him into a mold he didn't fit. You gave him every chance, Daniel said, and he made his choice. I turned back to face them. Now I make mine. Thomas opened a folder on his desk. Liz's estate, her recipes, her techniques, her half of the business. It's all legally yours now. Derek has no claim. The will is ironclad. Good. I took a breath. Then I know exactly what to do with it. What Daniel asked. I thought about Parker Jensen, the young server who'd shown me the security footage, who'd chosen to do the right thing when staying silent would have been easier. I thought about Emma, 8 years old, living with her Aunt Derek's daughter, my granddaughter. I thought about Liz's words. Give it to character, not bloodline. First I said, I'm going to Eugene. I have a granddaughter to meet, a little girl who deserves to know her family isn't broken. Not completely. And then Thomas asked. Then I said, I'm going to find someone worthy of what Liz and I built. Someone who understands that cooking is craft. That legacy is responsibility. That family is what you make it. I looked at the blank screen one more time. Thank you, Liz, I said quietly, for knowing when to let go, for teaching me how. Then I walked out of Thomas Bradford's office and into whatever came next. The courtroom had been silent when Judge Helena Morrison delivered the final sentence. Sienna Castellano, 25 years maximum security, no parole eligibility for 20. Marcus Vale, 18 years federal prison for conspiracy, fraud, and racketeering. Cameron Stratton, 12 years for conspiracy to commit murder and providing deadly substances. And Derek Whitmore, 7 years for attempted murder conspiracy and theft of intellectual property. 7 years. My son would be 41 when he walked free. I stood outside Oregon State Penitentiary on a cold March morning, the rain typical of Portland beating against my umbrella. The guard led me through 3 security checkpoints before I reached the visiting room, where Derrick sat on the other side of reinforced glass, wearing orange, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. He picked up the phone. I did the same. Dad, he said, his voice cracking. I'm so sorry. I didn't come here for apologies. I interrupted, keeping my tone measured. I came to tell you that I'm not coming back. This is the only visit you'll get from me. His face crumpled. Please, I know I destroyed everything, but I need to serve your time. I said you need to figure out who you are without Marcus Vale whispering in your ear, without Sienna manipulating you, without my money bailing you out. I paused, watching him absorb the words. 7 years is a gift, Derek. Use it to become someone Emma would be proud to call her father. Emma, he whispered. Is she? How is she? She's 8 years old, I replied. Is she smart, curious, and she loves to draw? She draws pictures of restaurants and chefs. Her Aunt Lauren is raising her well. I leaned forward slightly. I'm setting up a trust fund for her education. You won't have access to it, neither will Lauren. It goes directly to Emma when she turns 18. Derrick nodded, tears streaming down his face. Tell her I love her. Tell her I'm sorry I wasn't there. I'll tell her you existed, I said. What kind of man you become is up to you. Goodbye, Derek. I hung up the phone and walked away, his muffled sobs following me down the hallway. 3 days later, I drove to Eugene, Oregon, where Emma Stratton lived with her Aunt Lauren Hayes in a modest 2-bedroom house with a garden in the front yard. Lauren met me at the door, her resemblance to Jessica striking, the same dark hair, the same cautious brown eyes. Mr. Whitmore, she said, extending her hand. Thank you for coming. Call me Grant, I replied. Is she here? Lauren nodded and led me inside, where Emma sat at the kitchen table coloring. When she looked up, my breath caught. She had Derrick's chin, Jessica's eyes, and Liz's smile, a combination that felt both heartbreaking and hopeful. Emma, Lauren said gently, this is your grandfather, your dad's father. Emma studied me carefully, her crayon poised above the paper. Are you the chef? She asked. I smiled. Yes, I'm the chef. Aunt Lauren says you have a big restaurant with stars. 3 stars, I confirmed, kneeling down to her level. And I've been cooking for longer than your aunt has been alive. Emma's eyes widened. That's really old. I laughed, the sound surprising me. Yes, I suppose it is. Lauren brought coffee for us and juice for Emma, and we talked. Emma showed me her drawings, a stick figure chef with a tall white hat, a building labeled restaurant, and a family of 3 holding hands. When I asked who the 3 people were, she pointed. That's me, Aunt Lauren, and my dad. I don't remember him, but Aunt Lauren shows me pictures. Your dad made mistakes, I said carefully. Big ones. But he's trying to be better now. Emma nodded solemnly. Aunt Lauren says everyone gets second chances. Some people do. I agreed, but second chances have to be earned. Before I left, I handed Lauren an envelope containing the trust fund documents and a check for $50,000. For Emma's immediate needs, education activities, whatever she requires. The trust is separate, managed by my attorney. She'll have access at 18. Lauren's eyes filled with tears. Mr. Whitmore, Grant, this is too much. It's not nearly enough, I replied. I looked at Emma, who was back to coloring. I'd like to visit once a month if that's all right. Maybe teach her to cook someday. Lauren smiled. She'd love that. As I drove back to Portland, the rain finally stopped, and the sun broke through the clouds. I thought about Derek in his cell, Marcus in federal prison, Cameron in medium security writing letters I would never answer, and Sienna locked away for a quarter century. And I thought about Emma drawing pictures of chefs and restaurants, carrying a legacy she didn't yet understand. Back at the Grant house, I found Parker Jensen in the kitchen, orchestrating the evening prep with the confidence of someone who belonged there. She looked up when I entered, flour dusting her cheek. "How did it go?" she asked. "Better than expected," I said. "She's a good kid." Parker smiled. Kids usually are when they're raised right. I nodded, watching her return to her work, and I realized something. I had spent 40 years trying to save Derek. Now finally, I was ready to build something new. Spring had arrived. It was time to sow new seeds. The late afternoon sun filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Grant house's private dining room, casting golden light across the polished cherry table where Grant sat with Parker Jensen across from him. Between them rested a single bottle, its glass dark with age, its label faded but still legible. 1987 Willamette Valley Pinot Noir, the year Derek was born. Parker's eyes moved from the bottle to Grant's face, uncertainty flickering across her features. "Mr. Whitmore." "It was supposed to be for Derek." Grant interrupted quietly, running his thumb along the bottle's neck. "I bought it the day Liz brought him home from the hospital 37 years ago. I told myself I'd open it when he took over the restaurant." He paused, his jaw tightening. "I was wrong about who deserved it." Parker's breath caught. "Sir, I can't." "You saved my life," Grant stated, his voice firm. "You had every reason to walk away that night. A server doesn't risk her job, her safety, to warn a dying old man about his own son." "But you did." He reached into his jacket and withdrew a leather document folder, sliding it across the table. "I'm offering you 49% ownership of the Grant house effective immediately. Full ownership when I die." The color drained from Parker's face. She opened the folder with trembling fingers, scanning the legal documents inside. "Mr. Whitmore, this is your life's work, your family's legacy for 3 generations." "Exactly," Grant replied. "And legacy isn't about blood. It's about who carries forward what matters." He poured 2 glasses of the Pinot, the wine, a deep garnet in the fading light. Liz knew that. She wrote it in her will. Give it to character, not bloodline. You have the character, Parker. Derek never did. Parker lifted the glass, her hand unsteady, and tasted. Her eyes widened. "It's complex, earthy with cherry notes, but there's something underneath." "Leather smoke time," Grant said. 37 years of it. That's what gives it depth. He met her gaze. "You've been working here for 3 years. You know this place. You know the rhythms, the standards, the culture. But owning it, that's different. That's a different weight." "I'm 28, Parker whispered. "I'm not. I don't know if I'm ready for this." "You think I was ready when I was 25. Grant leaned back in his chair. "I inherited this restaurant from my father when I could barely poach an egg properly. But I learned, and you'll learn." He stood, walked to the far wall, and retrieved something from a hook Grant hadn't noticed before. A chef's coat, white but yellowed with age. The fabric worn soft at the elbows. "This was Liz's," Grant said, holding it up. The name Elizabeth Whitmore was embroidered in faded navy thread over the breast pocket. She wore this for 40 years. Every service, every prep shift, Every menu development meeting, it has tomato stains from 1982, burns from 1995, and a tear from the night she got her first Michelin star in 2003. Parker stood as Grant approached, and he draped the coat over her shoulders. It hung loose on her smaller frame, but she pulled it close, her fingers tracing the embroidery. "She wanted you to have it," Grant said. She left instructions in her video. "Find someone who loves this work more than the profit, someone who respects the craft. That's you, Parker." On Parker's eyes filled with tears. "I'll honor this. I swear I will." "I know," Grant said. He raised his glass to new legacies. Parker raised hers, and they drank. As the wine settled, Grant leaned forward, his expression shifting from sentimental to serious. "There are 3 things you need to understand about running this place. First, preparation is everything. Every sauce, every stock, every garnish prepared before service begins. You can't recover from chaos once the orders start coming." Parker nodded, pulling a small notebook from her apron and beginning to write. Second, Grant continued, "The integrity of your ingredients defines your reputation. If you compromise on quality, even once you compromise everything, our suppliers know we'll send back substandard produce. That's why they give us their best." On third, Parker asked, her pen poised. Grant smiled, but it was bittersweet. "Remember that you're not just feeding bodies, you're nourishing souls. Every plate that leaves this kitchen carries a story. Someone's anniversary, someone's first date, someone's last meal with a dying parent. Treat every dish like it matters because to someone out there it does." Parker closed the notebook, tears streaming down her face now. "Thank you for trusting me, for seeing something in me I didn't see in myself." Grant reached out and gripped her shoulder. "You start tomorrow not as sous chef. As co-owner, the staff needs to know the transition is happening." He paused. "And Parker, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to burn sauces, lose reservations, hire the wrong people. That's part of it. Don't let perfection paralyze you." Parker straightened, pulling Liz's coat tighter around her shoulders. "I won't let you down." "I know you won't," Grant said. He finished his wine, the bottle now half empty between them. "This restaurant survives because of people like you, not people like Derek." They stood there in the golden afternoon light, the weight of 40 years shifting from one generation to the next. And Grant felt something he hadn't felt in months. Lightness. The burden he'd carried since Liz's death. The fear of what would happen to their life's work finally lifted. "Let's get to work," Parker said, and Grant smiled. Outside, the cherry blossoms were beginning to bloom. Spring had arrived, and with it, a second chance. That night, I sat at my desk with a blank piece of paper and a pen. I wrote a letter to Derek, a letter I would never send, but I needed to write it anyway. "Derek, you'll never read this, but I need to write it. I failed you. Not by expecting too much, but by not expecting enough. When you were 6, you stole a toy. Your mother excused it. When you were 12, you forged my signature. I let it go. When you were 19, you stole $50,000 from the restaurant. Liz covered for you. We taught you that betrayal has no price, that tears erase consequences. I failed you. We both did. But at some point, Derek, you became responsible for your own choices. You chose poison over partnership. You chose Marcus's manipulation over your father's trust. Those choices were yours, not mine, not Liz's. Yours. I forgive you for poisoning me, for the 8 months of fear, but I will never forget what you tried to destroy. 3 generations of work. Your grandmother's recipes, your mother's legacy. You'll serve 7 years. When you get out, Emma will be 15. Don't waste that chance. Be the father to her that I failed to be to you. I've moved forward, found a new heir, someone who proved herself worthy. Parker will carry what Liz and I built. She'll honor it, make it better. Legacy isn't what you inherit. It's what you earn. I hope prison teaches you what I couldn't." But I won't be waiting for you anymore. I've let go, Dad. I folded the letter, sealed it, placed it in the bottom drawer of my desk. Unread, unsent. A ghost of what might have been. I thought about the others. Marcus Vale. 20 years of hatred over being held accountable once. What a waste. Cameron Stratton. 17 years blaming me instead of grieving Jessica. 17 years that could have been spent knowing Emma. Sienna Whitmore. Evil doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it says, I love you, while planning your murder. They were all destroyed by things they couldn't let go. I wouldn't make that mistake. Saturday morning, I drove to Riverview Cemetery. Liz's grave sat on a hillside overlooking the city. Elizabeth Whitmore, give it to character, not bloodline. I'd had the quote added last month. Her final wisdom. I knelt on the grass, placed white roses against the stone. I did it, Liz, I said quietly. What you asked. Parker will carry forward what we built. The wind rustled through the trees. Emma is beautiful. She has your smile, Derek's eyes, but something new, something hopeful. I touched the headstone. She asked me to teach her to cook. Next month, we're making your risotto together. I sat back on my heels. You were right about Derek, about love without accountability. My voice cracked. I wanted to save him, but you can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. A bird sang somewhere in the cemetery. Love without accountability isn't love, I said. It's enabling. You taught me that. I wish I'd learned it sooner. I stayed for an hour talking to Liz, telling her about Parker, about Emma, about the future. When I left, I felt lighter. I drove home through Portland, watched the city wake up. I thought about legacy, about what it really meant. Legacy isn't blood. It's values that outlive you, work that matters, care that echoes. Family isn't who shares your DNA. It's who shows up when your world collapses, who stands beside you, who chooses you. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means releasing the poison, moving forward without the weight. Betrayal. The deepest kind always comes from those you love most, because they're the only ones who can reach your heart. These were the lessons. Hard one, paid for, with 8 months of poison and 40 years of mistakes. At home, I made coffee, stood in my kitchen looking at the refrigerator. Emma's drawing was taped to the door crayon on construction paper. 2 stick figures, one tall, one small, both wearing chef's hats in 8-year-old handwriting. Me and Grandpa Grant. We are cooks. I touched the drawing, smiled. This was legacy. Not the restaurants, not the recipes, not the money, or the accolades. This little girl who wanted to learn, who saw cooking as connection, who understood that food is love made visible. Parker would run the Grant house. She'd build on what Liz and I created, make it better. Emma would learn to cook, would carry forward the craft, the care, and I would teach them both everything I knew, then step back, let them soar. That was enough, more than enough. That was everything. I poured my coffee, sat at the kitchen table, looked at Emma's drawing. The sun came through the window, warm, bright. Spring had turned to summer, and I was ready for whatever came next. 1 year after that October night, I watched Parker earn our 3rd Michelin star. The inspector arrived unannounced. A Tuesday evening ordinary service, no warning, just Parker running the kitchen with quiet confidence. She'd created a new signature dish, a reimagining of my grandmother's cocoa. 3 generations of technique, but the presentation was entirely her own. Modern, bold, respectful of the past, while reaching toward the future. The inspector ordered it, tasted it, made notes. Parker treated him like every other guest, with care, with attention. A week later, the announcement came. 3 Michelin stars. Parker called me crying. We did it, chef. No, I said, you did it. This is yours. You earned it. That night, we opened a bottle from the cellar, a 92. We sat in my kitchen and toasted the future. Do you regret it? Parker asked, giving it to me instead of Derek. I'd gotten Derek's letters one every month for a year, apologizing, telling me about recovery, about counseling, about what he was learning. I hadn't responded, not yet. Derek made his choices, I said. Maybe when he gets out, he'll be someone different. I hope so. For Emma's sake. You still love him. I love the boy he was. I'm learning to forgive the man he became. I swirled my wine. But that doesn't mean he gets the legacy. You earned it. Sunday mornings belong to Emma. She visited every other week now. Lauren drove up from Eugene. Let Emma and me have time together. This Sunday we made pancakes. Emma stood on a stool at my stove, carefully pouring batter. Perfect circle, I said. She beamed. 9 years old now. Derek's eyes, Liz's smile, but more and more just Emma. Grandpa, she asked, why doesn't my dad live with us? I'd been waiting for this question. Your dad made mistakes, big ones, and now he's learning how to be better. Do you still love him? I love the boy he used to be, and I'm learning how to forgive the man he is now. Love is complicated, Emma. Sometimes it means letting people face consequences. Emma flipped another pancake. When he comes home, will you be there? I don't know yet. Maybe. I touched her shoulder. But I'll always be here for you. Always. Promise. Promise. We ate together. Emma told me about school, about the recipe book she was making, copying down everything I taught her. 3 generations of technique passing to the 4th. Later, Lauren told me Derek wrote to Emma too. Short letters. Emma wrote back, sometimes cautious, but wanting a relationship someday. The others had faded into consequences. Sienna remained in maximum security. 25 years. I felt nothing hearing about her anymore. Marcus served his sentence in federal prison. The Veil collection dismantled, everything he'd built gone. Cameron wrote monthly begging to see Emma. I hadn't responded, maybe after parole, maybe never. Derek had 5 years left. His letter said he was sober, working in the prison kitchen, learning what I'd tried to teach him years ago. But I didn't respond. Not yet. Forgiveness takes time. Trust even longer. Daniel had retired. Called every Sunday. We talked about the restaurant, about Emma, about the future neither of us had expected. And Parker had become what I'd hoped Derek would be. She ran the Grant house with integrity. With the understanding that cooking was about connection, about nourishing souls, she'd earned every bit of success. October came again, 1 year since the board meeting, since everything shattered and reformed. I stood in my backyard under the autumn moon. The air was crisp, the leaves turning, another cycle completing. I wasn't the same man I'd been a year ago. That man had been naive, trusting, blind to darkness in his own son. This man knew better, knew that trust must be earned. That family is choice, not obligation. That legacy is character, not chromosomes. This man had been poisoned, betrayed, nearly destroyed, and had survived, had rebuilt, had found purpose in Emma's laughter and Parker's success. The cherry blossoms had bloomed and faded, spring to summer, summer to fall. And through it all, the Grant house had stood. Not just stood, thrived. Tomorrow, Parker and I would train 2 new sous chefs, young, hungry, eager to learn. The cycle continuing, Emma would visit next weekend. We'd make Liz's risotto together. I'd tell her stories about her grandmother. And Derek would serve his time, would write his letters, would hope for reconciliation that might never come. I'd let go of the need to save him, let go of the guilt, let go of the fantasy that love alone could fix everything. Sometimes letting go is the hardest kind of love. I looked up at the moon, full bright, illuminating the garden Liz and I had planted 40 years ago. I did it, I said to the night, to her memory. I gave it to someone worthy. I protected what we built. And I'm still here, still standing. The wind rustled through the trees, and somewhere I imagine Liz smiled. If you're still here with me after this journey, I have one last thing to share. Something I learned at 68 that I wish I'd known at 28. You've walked with me through the darkest chapter. Watch me discover my son was poisoning me. Watch me confront betrayal. Watch me rebuild from ashes. Why did you stay? The drama, the twists, the justice. Or was it something deeper? The fear that someone you trust might betray you too. I think it's the last one. Because deep down, we all know the people who can hurt us most are the ones we love. So let me share what I've learned. Not as a chef, not as a businessman, but as a man who survived his own son's attempt to destroy him. Trust is the most valuable currency you have. Spend it carefully. I gave Derek unlimited trust simply because he was my son. Never made him prove he deserved it. Never set boundaries. Never demanded accountability. Bloodline doesn't guarantee trustworthiness. Love without accountability isn't love, it's enabling. And it almost killed me. Parker earned my trust in one moment. Derek destroyed 40 years of it in 8 months. Trust isn't inherited, it's earned. Legacy isn't what you leave behind, it's who carries it forward. I spent decades building the Grant House. 3 Michelin stars, 12 restaurants' recipes passed down through generations. I thought that was my legacy. I was wrong. Legacy is the lives you impact, the values you instill, the people who carry your work forward. Derek could have had it all. But he didn't want to earn it. He wanted to steal it and sell it. That's not legacy. That's theft. Parker wants to build on what Liz and I created to honor it, to make it better. Emma's 9. She makes pancakes on Sunday mornings and copies recipes into a notebook. She's learning not just how to cook, but why it matters. That's legacy. Choose carefully who you trust with what you build, because they'll either elevate it or destroy it. The deepest pain comes from those you love most. Betrayal from a stranger is a beasting, painful temporary. Betrayal from your child destroys you, hollows you out, makes you question everything about love and family and trust. Derek didn't just poison my body, he tried to poison my soul to make me bitter, suspicious, unable to trust again. I almost let him, but I made a choice. I wouldn't let Derek's darkness extinguish my light. Wouldn't let his betrayal define my future. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. Harder than confronting him. Harder than watching him get arrested, but necessary. Because the alternative, becoming bitter and closed, that would mean Derek won. And I refuse to give him that victory. Forgiveness is not the same as reconciliation. I forgive Derek. I've released the poison from my heart. Let go of the hatred. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. Doesn't mean letting him back into my life. Doesn't mean pretending nothing happened. Forgiveness is for me. It releases me from carrying his guilt, from being consumed by anger. Reconciliation is for him, and he hasn't earned it. Maybe he never will. Derek writes every month, apologizes, tells me he's changed. Maybe he has, but I'm not responding. Not yet. Maybe not ever. You can forgive someone and still protect yourself from them. You can wish them well and still maintain boundaries. You can hope they change and still refuse to gamble your peace on that hope. Forgive for yourself. Only reconcile when they've proven they deserve it. Family is both bloodline and choice. Emma's my blood, my granddaughter. I didn't choose her, but I choose to love her, to invest in her, to give her what her father couldn't. Parker isn't my blood. We share no DNA, no history before 6 months ago. But she's family now because I chose her and she chose this legacy. Both are real. Both matter. Both deserve everything I can give. Don't let traditional definitions limit your capacity to love. Don't let biology dictate who deserves your legacy. Sometimes the family you choose is the family that saves you. You can't save everyone. I couldn't save Derek from himself. Couldn't love him into being someone different. Couldn't force him to want what I wanted for him. All the love and opportunity and second chances in the world can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved, and you have to choose. Will you let them destroy you too? I chose to save myself, chose to protect what Liz and I built, chose to invest in people who wanted to be invested in. It was the hardest choice, but it was the right one. Because sacrificing yourself on the altar of someone else's dysfunction doesn't make you noble. It makes you complicit. Save yourself first. Then if there's anything left, offer it to those who've proven they deserve it. I sit in my office now, 2 photographs on my desk, one of Liz taken 40 years ago, her smile bright, her eyes full of hope. One of Parker and Emma taken last week in the kitchen. Both wearing chef's coats, both laughing. That's my legacy. Not the restaurants, not the money, not revenge or justice. Those 2 women learning, growing, building something beautiful. That's what matters. My name is Grant Whitmore. 1 year ago, my son tried to kill me for $52 million. Today, I'm teaching a stranger, no, a daughter, how to run this empire. Today, I'm making pancakes with my granddaughter and passing down recipes my grandmother taught me. Today, I'm standing in the restaurant my wife and I built and watching it thrive under new hands. This is my story. Messy, painful, real. And if you take nothing else from it, remember this. The best family isn't always the one you're born into. Sometimes it's the family you choose. The Grant house opens for dinner service in 3 hours. Parker's already prepping. I can hear the kitchen coming alive. The rhythm I've known for 40 years. Emma visits tomorrow. We're making fresh pasta. I'll teach her the technique my father taught me. She'll write it in her notebook. The 4th generation learning what the 1st generation created. Life goes on. Complicated, messy, beautiful. Like a good recipe. Thank you for being here, for listening, for walking this journey with me. Remember, trust is earned, legacy is chosen, and family is what you make it. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a kitchen to check. The work continues. My name is Grant Whitmore. This is my family story. A story of betrayal, poison, and the $52 million my son tried to steal by killing me. If you followed this far, you know the truth. Family betrayal cuts deeper than any stranger's blade. Derek wasn't corrupted overnight. I enabled him for 37 years, mistaking indulgence for love, silence for protection. Don't be like me. Don't confuse loyalty with accountability. Here's what I learned. What God revealed to me through the darkest valley, trust must be earned even from blood. Proverbs 27:6 says, "Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but deceitful are the kisses of an enemy." Derek's kisses were poison. Parker's warning was the wound that saved my life. Family isn't just DNA, it's choice. This family story taught me that the daughter I chose, Parker, honored my legacy more than the son I raised. God doesn't call us to save everyone. He calls us to steward what He's entrusted to us wisely. I spent 40 years trying to rescue Derek from himself. I should have been building something worthy of those who deserved it. Forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. I've forgiven Derek. God commands it. And holding on to bitterness would poison me worse than any chemical, but forgiveness is releasing the dead. Reconciliation is opening the door again. Some doors must stay closed. This family story ends not with revenge, but with rebuilding. Emma has her future secured. Parker has the restaurant. And I have peace knowing that legacy is measured not by what we leave behind, but by who continues it with integrity. Don't be like me. Set boundaries early. Choose character over bloodline. And when family betrayal comes, because it often does, remember that every wound teaches us who truly deserves our trust. The deepest family betrayal is often the catalyst for the most profound transformation.